Let me start by wishing a good day to my Haitian community. As many of you already know me, I am Jean-Claude, professional engineer and former leader of the Workmasters marketing company, who served the Haitian community until the year 2016. What I'm going to present you is a shocking story of treason, betrayal, to murder executed by my niece, the Dr. Marie-Paul Dupiton, out of greed, jealousy, in search of financial fortune. It is a shocking story, the like of which no one in our community has ever heard before. So I hope that this video presentation will make you all aware of the danger that can exist within a family. Now, with me having gone through 2 previously failed marriages, it took me a long 10 years before deciding to marry my girlfriend, Rose Marlene Myth. Now, let me first say that this turbulent story you're about to hear is not about my defunct marriage of years ago, but for you to understand the gravity of the actions that followed until today, I must give you a quick summary of how it was important to me that my last marriage would be a happy union of 2 families. I first organized a gathering in my office with my family and my next wife-to-be, Marlene. And as that went extremely well, I followed up with family meetings at her home, her sister's home, and finally had a gathering at her mother's house. Then I decided to ask her in marriage in the presence of both family during a dinner I had planned at her house. And as this picture represents the happy moment, with my family excited, followed by this memorable picture of the 2 families united to celebrate the union of Jean-Claude and Marlene Myth. Then months later, we happily reunited as Mr. and Mrs. Lee in this picture with Marlene's mother, with the hope of a long-lasting union. However, there was a major problem in the background that was invisible to me, because as my future wife, her sister and her mother were all homeowners in the exclusive neighborhood of Jamaica Estates, unknowing to me, my niece, the Dr. Joanne Dupiton, was extremely disturbed, feeling that her uncle Jean-Claude would have a better and higher quality of life than her. So as a medical doctor, she swore to put an end to that marriage, if not before it started, but soon after. So let me go into this dramatic and cool story that will finally explain why I retracted from the Haitian community for so many years and will continue to do so, as I am still under the barrage of attacks from Dr. Dupiton. Let's get started as I first address my first wife, Mrs. Paulette Reed, another victim of Dr. Dupiton. Hello, good day, Paulette. This is Jean-Claude, communicating with you as a real friend like we used to be, with an important message which I'm sure you'll be interested in, since it involves our daughter Tanisha Ely. So I want you to forget any disagreement we had in the recent past, because what you don't know, regardless of everything, I've always considered you as a friend. Now, as Marlene and I had decided to get married, I had immediately chosen my first nephew, Eric Balmio Jr., to be our best man. And it was just days before the wedding that I discovered that my niece, Joanne Dupiton, had coerced him not to be the best man because, unknowing to me, She already had planned to destroy the wedding. But fortunately, I was able to get Fritz Modi to replace him at the last minute. And that was step number one of the dark Dupiton troubles on the day of my wedding. Then came the day early in my marriage when I had a little incident with Marlene's son. So as I had a daughter who I was close to, I decided to call Tanisha and tell her what happened. Then as Tanisha's reaction wasn't what I expected, she started to say certain things to me in an angry tone. So I simply decided she wasn't mature enough and that I would no longer include her in my communication regarding my marriage. But what I could not know at the time is that Mad Dog Dupiton had started indoctrinating her against her father. Then as time went by and I started to have issues with Marlene's sister Joelle, I communicated this information to my family, but you were never included because in those days you were a guest at my home and I never considered you to be involved in my personal situation. Then came one day when Marlene had scheduled a trip to Haiti with her club and did not tell me about it. I objected, and especially because I had a doctor's visit scheduled around that same time. Then Lillian called me saying, "Oh, let her go. I'll take you to the doctor." And since I'll be under anesthesia during that procedure, I told Lillian, "Okay, so I'll give you a letter to give you authorization to make decision while I'm under anesthesia." And to my big surprise, who came to get the letter? Lillian sent Tanisha. Well, I was very shocked. First, let me tell you what this picture represents. It was on her 30th birthday party that I called her over to do my little rap song from the days she was a kid and I was a popular DJ. And we went like this. To the beat, yo. My name is JC and I want you to know that I am the king of the microphone. I'll rock your body to the beat and I blow your mind, my super up. Da 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 da. And so on. And that was in the good old days. Before Joan Dupiton, out of Chelsea, decided to split us. So as I started to tell Tanisha about what was going on with me and Marlene's sister, Tanisha was totally disinterested. Then as I gave her the letter, I said, well, since she's my daughter, I would rather she takes me to the doctors for that procedure. Tanisha automatically became disinterested of taking me to the doctor and telling me about her schedule, etc. So realizing she wasn't interested, I told her to forget it. But then I noticed that Lillian was neither interested to take me to the hospital. So I was able to get the doctor to reschedule it, and Marlene went with me before she went to Haiti. Then came the day that the family was having a New Year or Christmas party at Tanisha's house, which I figured you were there too. But because of an issue that happened, I decided I was not going. Then Marlene ignored me, got dressed, got on the car, and went to join my family at Tanisha's house. So I called my family and told them, listen, tell Marlene to come back home because we got things to do. Then I realized it was the clothes who made Marlene go over there without me. So at that time I called Tanisha's house to have me talk to Marlene. But all my calls were unanswered. And I knew something was wrong. Again, I wondered, why wouldn't Tanisha answer my calls? But let me tell you right now, it was Lillian and Joanne who told her not to answer me. I don't know if you knew anything that day because you were at Tanisha's house. The party this time was at Joanne's house. But as we didn't make it, Tanisha would bring me some food and have me meet the best and only boyfriend she ever had. A great boyfriend that Joanne would soon make her lose, realizing that he could interfere with her plans to destroy me. 2 weeks later, I decided to organize the New York Giants Super Bowl party at my home, which everybody attended. We all had a great time. Marlene went to Haiti. Then she returned like a crazy woman possessed by a demon and ended the marriage. So I called my family to tell them the shocking news of what just happened. But to my shock, no one answered the phone. But unknowing to me at the time, It was an act mystically imposed on her by Dr. Dupiton. But at the time, I quickly realized that while the family was at my home celebrating the new year and watching the Giants win the Super Bowl, they were also staging their final plan for their destruction of my life as executed by Dr. Marie Dupiton. So I headed to my sister Rosalind's house, and the next morning Lillian came in, yelling at me, cursing me, telling me she's going to kick me out of there also. But what shocked me is that during all that time, I never heard a word from Tanisha. It was a month later that I decided to call her, and she listened to my call, and when I told her to pray for Marlene, all she said, she'll pray for me. And when I told her, no, pray for Marlene also, she needs more, Tanisha hung up the phone on me. Finally, Ricky and Fafa came to see me, and here comes Tanisha. So while I'm talking to Ricky and Fafa, I noticed a very decent attitude from Tanisha. So I said to her, Tanisha, what's going on? I was the best father to you. And she replied to me, no, you were not. Then she left the room. Ricky and Fafa had to go get her to apologize. And I was in total shock. Then when Lillian came to the house, I told Lillian what was going on, what Tanisha did. She said, no, Tanisha wasn't mad because of that. She was mad because you said fuck you to her. And she said that in front of Gite's mother. So as I began to have problem with the family, Lillian and Joanne sent the police to arrest me on some fake charge. But before I continue on this, I must make some important points about my sister Rosalind, who was fully stricken by Alzheimer's, and her husband Eric, who by then was fully under the control of Lillian and Joanne. Well, one morning, as I heard the full-time caretaker screaming at me that my sister is missing, I jumped out, went in the neighborhood looking for her. Finally called the police station, which informed me that she was found wandering on Springfield Boulevard. So I quickly headed to the police station, where she gave me a big smile, happy to see me, and took her back home. And as I reported the incident to her son Eric Jr., I never heard a word back, which surprised me. Then one day while I was in the kitchen, she came in, stood there quietly looking at me. Then as I said, hi sister, and strangely, as someone with full lucidity, she said, Claudie, are you okay? I said, yes sis, I'm fine. Then to my shock, she replied, are you sure you're okay? Moun yo pa bon tande? The people are no good, you know. And she just turned around and walked away. In total shock, I looked at her as her caretaker, who was right there, was stupefied, seeing her as someone with full lucidity. So let me continue from where I left off. Now, as Sister Lillian and her daughter Dr. Dupiton had long-term plans for financial gains on my sick sister Rosalind, they had not planned for my arrival at my sister's house and decided that I had to go. So they framed the story for the police to get me arrested. I get arrested. The court set a tiny bell. I called the family to come pay this tiny bell. No one answered. They left me in jail for a week. Finally, as Ricky came to pay it, I went home and found the locks in my sister's house changed. Angry, I looked inside, and guess who I saw standing inside? It was Fanfan and Tanisha blocking me from entering Rosalind's house. In shock, I tried to open the door, and a little glass broke. Tanisha called the police on me. Did you ever know that, Paulette? The police come. Tanisha says she calls the police because I was crazy. The police take me to the hospital. They decided I was fine, sent me back home, and I was told that the police informed Tanisha and the Balmier boys they are not allowed to lock me out because that was my residence. Still, when I got back, I found all the doors locked. I finally got inside through a window. Did you know that? From that point on, Tanisha disconnected with me completely. While this action was being executed by Fafa and Tanisha, Lillian and Joanne were at Camkids Pediatrics sending their order to Fafa and Tanisha. And that's when I communicated with you. You, Paulette, you called me, asking me, what's going on with Tanisha? Tanisha is acting funny. And I told you what had happened. And you went to deal with Tanisha. And that's the day I decided that I must put Paulette on my mailing list so you are informed of everything that's going on with Tanisha. Then a year went by with the clothes, Lillian, Joanne, torturing me at Rosalind's house. Then came the worst as my nephew Ricky Bamir entered the house, served me an eviction notice ordered by Joanne Dupiton from my sister's house, where I had lived in since the 1970s, an eviction notice with the extremely outrageous and sickening claim that I was doing drugs in the house. And that's when I truly realized how naive my nephews are, letting themselves used, abused by Dr. Marie Dupiton. And here is why. A year later, Ricky accidentally included me in a text conversation he was having with Joanne. Then, angry seeing me there, he released a gross lie fed to him by Lillian and Joanne that I had caused the death of my mother. But as you will soon be shocked to learn, it was a death caused by Lillian and Joanne for vindictive and financial reasons. So stand by and let me continue. Now, as Joanne Dupiton had convinced the barmaid not to give me the new key to the house, as I arrived home late one day and found the doors locked, I knew I was in trouble. Then around midnight, I saw my sister Rosalind walking in through the kitchen. And even though I knew she was no hope under her full-blown Alzheimer's, I waved at her through the windows. And to my shock, she simply walked to the front door, opened it for me, and gave me a big smile. Now let me make this clear. As Dr. Dupiton and her mother had secret plans for financial gains on my Alzheimer-inflicted sister, she had not planned for my arrival at my sister's house, so she used her mystical control powers to convince my nephews to take me to court and evict me. But as their request was rejected, as they are not the homeowners, she convinced them to trick their father to unknowingly sign the house deed to them, go to court, and get an eviction order on me. And as the city marshals showed up to evict me, I watched my sister Rosalind in the kitchen looking at me as if to tell me, Brother Claude, didn't I tell you? Mon yo pa bon tande? And with that I left the house, and that was the last time I saw my dear sister Rosalind 9 years ago, and headed to a city shelter. And with that, I moved to the more dramatic stage number 2 of Dr. Dupiton's criminal downfall of the family and putting me today heading toward death within weeks or months. Now, having had no time to secure my own apartment, I headed to a city shelter, where I was surprisingly pleased with the support I received and the many other Haitians in similar situations. However, as you will see later, that wasn't good enough for Dr. Dupiton, who proceeded to file many lawsuits against me, looking for money and attempts to make me disappear, as will be further detailed to you later on. But months later, as my young daughter Tanisha was being used mystically in the accomplishment of their schemes, my cousin Giselle Marty called me from Florida and said she had gotten a call from Tanisha, and Tanisha told her to ship me to Florida. And Giselle scolded Tanisha, saying, what right you have to ask her for something like that? She's my daughter. Finally, as I got real sick here, I passed out in the street. Giselle called Tanisha to go take care of her father. She came to take care of me. Being that I'm comfortable at Tanisha's, Joanne offered to make peace with me. Everybody in the family called me to say peace is welcome. I accepted to make peace with Joanne, as I expected the whole family to come over and complete the peace. And I received a phone call from Joanne saying Happy Thanksgiving. The next thing I saw was Tanisha sneaking out of the house to go to Joanne's house. That's when everything went down. You insulted me and I ended up having to leave the house. So as you all forced me to leave Tanisha's house while I was still sick, upon arriving home, I'll get the biggest joy that would next be followed by the biggest shock. Arriving home, I was shocked to see that Tanisha had completely refurbished my apartment, provided me all kind of equipment and tools that I needed for my medical care. I was so shocked that I took pictures and sent to the whole family to show them what Tanisha had done for me. But unfortunately, that would be followed by the big shock. And it was when my cousin from Florida, Giselle Marley, called me and said that Tanisha had informed her that I did not appreciate all the things she had done for me. Then Joanne Dupiton called my cousin in Florida to back up whatever Tanisha told her. But fortunately for me, I had already shared with the family all my appreciations for all the great things Tanisha had done for me, proving that Joanne Dupiton had coerced Tanisha to give that big lie to my cousin Giselle, that Joanne Dupiton is an evil, sadistic controller of our daughter Tanisha. The point I'm saying, Paulette, you too were a victim of the Dupiton. But what bothers me most is that from the first month of my wedding, without me knowing, they had trained Tanisha to become my enemy. And it went through all these years, Tanisha coming to my house, she was my enemy until the end. And as we are enemies today, you and I'd like that to stop. What I want is to find out what they did to our daughter Tanisha. From the creation of this family many decades before me, we've been highly respected for our values and respected by all. Respect that I continue to promote as I travel to Brooklyn to watch my niece Joanne Dupiton being honored at New York City Hall, as I organized in my home a bridal shower for Dr. Dupiton, and I nearly passed out as I saw her stumble down the stairs, but thanks to God, all went okay. Then as me and my wife proudly took this picture with her and her husband on the day of her wedding, etc., etc. However, this is a picture that has a long history behind it. That took place weeks after my wedding of the century, when she had coerced my nephew Ricky not to appear as the best man. So as she had immediately scheduled a bigger wedding in the Dominican Republic, and we did not attend, she got upset and decided, upon her return, to immediately stage a second wedding reception at the same location we just had our wedding. And when we took this picture, here is what we silently said to ourselves. I jokingly said she thought she could beat our wedding of the century, to which Marlene replied, "You bet," and she lost big time. Ha ha ha. In conclusion, having decided to end my marriage to Marlene before it even started, Dr. Dupiton immediately asked Mr. Guiteus to marry her, that she chose to remain Mrs. Dupiton rather than the new Mrs. Teus. Then, as we decided not to attend her first wedding in the Dominican Republic, and she decided to show us off with this wedding at the same location we had our wedding of the century, Dr. Dupiton's project to destroy her Uncle Claudie was on its way. And she accomplished it, all because I had a greater life, a good wife, a perfect daughter, and lived in Jamaica Estates. Now, after putting me through many years of torture, eviction from my home and from my sister's house, to false arrest, life in a homeless shelter, corrupting and dividing me from my daughter, etc., We arrived at the end of last year, 2024, when I got sick, reunited with my daughter, and was at her house. But as Dr. Dupiton viewed my reconciliation and my stay at my daughter's house as a threat to her objectives, she gave me the shock of my life as she contacted me for the first time in a decade, asking to make peace with me. And as I mentioned before, in shock and tired of fighting, I had accepted her peace offer. And then I saw you, Paulette, and Tanisha heading to Joanne's house. And that's when I realized that Joanne's peace offer was totally fake, as she only wanted to prove to me that she's the boss who controls my daughter and you. Now, Paulette, in order to show you the true significance and the source of what you said, I will play just a section of that message. Listen, then I will explain.
Yes, Jean-Claude. Don't you hang up the phone on me, okay? You want to stay in this house. You don't even know how it was bought. You're demanding to stay here. This house belongs to me and Tanisha, and you cannot come here and start and want to demand and fight with her. She has been taking care of you for a month. She has a job that she has to pay bills, and she has to go into the office. She works from home, but there are times that she has to go into the office, and you don't understand this. She got someone to care for you while you're in your own apartment. Look how many years you haven't been in touch with her. And now you want to demand that she's your daughter? You don't even know how her college tuition was paid. So don't even start. This house belongs to Tanisha and me, and you cannot come here and demand, okay? You're lucky that she took you in and cared for you till you can walk without a cane, all right? So don't start no shit. If you want the police to come and take you out and bring you home, you will get that. So stop the shit, okay?
Now, Paulette, as you're probably wondering if that was really you, you will confirm that this was your voice and your words. I had never replied to that message simply because I knew that it didn't come from the Paulette I knew for more than 40 years, but from a Paulette mystically created by Joanne Dupiton. Now, Paulette, with you and I having been divorced for some 40 years and never once having an argument while raising our daughter, how do you explain all those senseless words that you left me? Now, Tanisha is an adult in her 40s who I was temporarily staying with because my cousin Giselle from Florida had asked her to go take care of her sick father. And she did. Second, if Tanisha had to return to work, all she had to do is say it to me. Then I would have thanked her, go back to my apartment with my roommate, and keep her informed on how I was doing. Third, as she's a grown adult in her own home, this is the first time that I or anyone else in the world ever heard a mother insult a sick father who was being cared for by his daughter in her home. And last, how was it possible that Tanisha allowed her mother to insult her father on the relationship that you have no authority over? In the end, those words only reflect the abnormal and unnatural level of control that Joanne Dupiton has over an older and more mature mother than she can ever be. Now, as our daughter is in her 40s, after Joanne Dupiton had ruptured her relationship with the great boyfriend I mentioned before, shouldn't you be more concerned about what Tanisha has planned for her future in her mid-40s rather than rupturing her relationship with her father? First, as you said, look how many years I haven't been in touch with my daughter. You seem to forget that it was after Joanne Dupiton ended my marriage to Maureen that she coerced you to divide me from my daughter. More confusing, Paulette. How is it that the daughter I raised her whole life, I would need to demand that she's my daughter? And as to the words, don't start no shit, and the police coming to get me, words never heard since I've known you, something dramatic has happened to you, Paulette. And pay attention to this, Paulette. There is no family in the world who would hear an ex-wife of 4 decades ago say these words to a family member about his adult daughter and not jump all over the ex-wife. But my niece Joanne Dupiton and my family quietly accepted those outrageous words. That should tell you a lot. Now let me ask you, was that the Paulette I knew for some 50 years as a good friend, a wife, an ex-wife raising our daughter, all the way to becoming a best friend and a guest at my wedding to Marlene and attending all events in our home? No, unfortunately, the Paulette you just heard is one mystically created by Dr. Dupiton. And is Tanisha the perfect daughter who recently, when I passed out in the street and she took me to her home, gave me the best care? And I even remember when I couldn't make it up the stairs, it was her and your husband Zebi helping me. I remember the day when I decided to go take a shower. I felt dizzy and I yelled for my daughter. She came in and started giving me emergency care. I was totally nude, dirtying myself, watching Tanisha, cleaning me, giving me all possible care, then helping me to my bed. Then came the day when she had to rush me against the hospital, visiting me every day. Then the doctors discovered I had somehow contracted the AIDS virus while in the hospital. They put me in a special room, alone, getting special care. And that's just a fraction of the story. In the end, to make a long story short, she had saved my life. But in this family controlled by Joanne Dupiton, the reaction is total silence. As Joanne Dupiton achieved her goal of separating me from my daughter, the words police, the profanities, and your claim that Tanisha, a daughter who's in her 40s, is no longer my daughter, is not something that any mother would ever say. And even more troubling is how could Joanne Dupiton achieve the impossible goal of grabbing my daughter from me and using her to destroy her own father? And the answer is in the mystical, spiritual, and evil processes of our motherland of Haiti, where Joanne grew up before coming to the US to shatter this family into a family of evil deeds. Now, before I leave you, Paulette, I have a few words for my niece, Joanne Dupiton. Now, Joanne, as my baby niece, who I took care of from a young age, then watched you grow up and becoming a medical doctor, I always had a very positive view of you as a proud family member. Then I remember when you decided to get married, I approached my wife and said, I must have a bridal shower for my young niece Joanne Dupiton. And we did. And after you created an ugly incident, I decided to have a family reunion to make peace with you. And we did. Now while I continue, let me show you some of the great pictures of my life that drove your insanity. And let me continue. Now, as I already stated, you had coerced my nephew Ricky not to be the best man at my wedding and not to tell me. Your next act was soon after my marriage that I realized my wife was about to lose her house as she had not made the mortgage payment for months, being unemployed. So on her next court date, I instructed her to tell the judge that she is now married and that her husband will take care of the mortgage. So as I saved Marlene's house for her, as I was making the payments under her ex-husband's name and requested that her name be changed, the bank informed me that they had already instructed my wife to do so. And to make the long story short, I discovered that it was you, Joanne, who had manipulated my wife not to put my name on her house, as that would be risky to her, even though the name change was just on her bill and not the house. So as your 4 years of secret plans and devious activities proves that you're an extremely dangerous person, not deserving of this society, but someone who must end up in jail. You had developed an overwhelming jealousy, evicted me from my dear sister Rosin's house, pushing me into a homeless shelter, filed lawsuits against me for money, got me wrongly arrested, and finally the corruption of my daughter. A corruption so massive that under your control, my daughter has refused to provide me necessary medical care, with the most shocking revelation that you use evil, spiritual, voodoo, and other mystical means to destroy my life and transform our family into one controlled by evil means. And as I leave it at that, for you to reflect on, let me just share a couple of examples. As I was home with my wife one day, I received this shocking message from you telling me to get out of the house and that my wife is sending the police to arrest me. In shock, I showed it to her, and as she laughed at your idea and you realized that my wife was not serious, you took off and disappeared. Second, upon my sister Liliane realizing that this whole mess could backfire on them, she requested that we put an end to all the trouble and make peace. And as you can see, your sister Dominique, my daughter Tanisha, and myself reacted in agreement with the three messages above. So as we all rejoiced over this early peace agreement, came your shocking reply. No peace, no negotiation, psycho. I only know the police. Yep, only the police. Then as your mother buckled under your arrogance, here we are many years later. Your arrogance exploded when you sent me this message saying how you were happy that I got married a third time, leaving the apartment over Camkids Pediatrics to move to Jamaica Estates. A Jamaica Estates that generated your insane jealousy that destroyed our family. Now this last example will prove once and for all that you're a sick and dangerous person operating as a medical doctor. You went and filed a criminal complaint against me looking for money damages in the Queens County Criminal Court. But as they viewed your complaint as baseless and irrational, I received the above letter where the court simply canceled your request. But as I drove you from crazy to insanity, you refiled your complaint in a Long Island court that required you to serve me personally. Here is a partial list of insane emails you sent me that prove your insanity. You started by telling me how I'm served at 3:48 p.m. per Judge Capricorn. Then how the real judge will be the judge on November 14 while calling me a cyber terrorist, talking about my 3 failed marriages, how I was evicted from everyone's home, even evicted from a shelter. Then bragging about how you know the police, there will be no going back, no negotiation. Psycho. How the community is ready to testify against me in court, and how you, the mad dog, remain silent for 2 years. How happy you were that I got married a third time and living in your apartment above Camkids Pediatrics. Then complaining about me invading my stepkid's privacy and that I blew it myself, talking about my marriage. How are you going to send my emails to the police, calling me nasty and sickening, and that the DA, the lawyers, and the police will conclude that I need help? Claiming that if I intend to move back to Cambria Heights, the police will be waiting for me. Telling me that you also filed a defamation lawsuit in Supreme Court, that I could hide behind my computer to terrorize people. And on and on and on it went. Interestingly though, this evil act was a blessing to me. Because as you had remained totally silent throughout this saga, this first and only written communication I had ever received from you will destroy your medical license. But the best was yet to come, as the judge decided that she had enough of your absurd case and demanded that you settle the case with me and close it. And that's the day that I witnessed for the first time a Dr. Dupiton reaching maximum insanity, yelling in the courthouse, claiming that I'm not allowed in Cambria Heights, and even saying that my daughter said that I'm a crazy man in need of mental help. And I hope that my daughter hears that, to find out who's more important to her, her father or a crazy cousin. And now to the real big one. Because on my first day appearing for her lawsuit in the Long Island court, someone walked up to me, handed me an envelope, and said, "You've been served." It was a shocker. Dr. Dupiton had filed a lawsuit against me in the U.S. Supreme Court for money and damages. And as you can see on the screen, this is just the first page of the document presented to you as evidence. And this full document is available at theclose.com/supreme-court.htm. The Mad Doc, who's running a very successful Camkids pediatric business, has the nerve to sue me for money. However, after the Long Island court told her to get lost, she realized that the Supreme Court would not be that nice, and she dropped the case. Now there are three quick dramatic incidents that I must recall for my nephews and daughter. First, it was my youngest nephew, Franz Balmier, who, upon graduating college, got an exclusive job opportunity with the NASA Space Agency in Florida. Then as I saw his mother, Rosalind Balmier, very depressed, she told me that her son has rejected the position because his girlfriend, Dana, didn't want him to go. And he ended up working as a bank teller. As I got very upset, being an engineering manager in New Jersey, I convinced the company president that I needed a new engineer, then hired Franz in a job that required experience, for which I assigned another engineer to monitor his progress. Then a year or so later, as the company was closing, I got a manager's position at another firm and convinced Franz to join me, where he spent his lifetime as an engineer. Then days later, as my sister Rosalind, his mother, asked to see all my bills, on my way to work the next morning, I left them with her. Then coming back home, I got a big shock, seeing that she had paid the full balances of all my bills, which added to Lillian and Joanne's hidden jealousy. In shock, I asked, "Sister, how do you want me to pay you back?" And she just smiled, saying, "It's just a token of my appreciation for the great things you did for my son." But soon after Dr. Dupiton ended my marriage, she coerced Franz into becoming her partner in her destruction of my life. And I want Franz to remember what he did to his benefactor uncle, who made him a lifetime engineer from a bank teller job. Then came his brother, my older nephew, Eric Balmier Jr., who Joanne Dupiton had coerced not to be the best man at my wedding. Then a month later, she had him and my daughter Tanisha perform a dance routine at her wedding to show me who's the boss. Then 3 years later, upon me sending an invitation for a family party, he proved once more that he was still my favorite nephew, as he sent me this message in which he congratulated me for being the best man and the leader of my family, which touched me deeply. But unfortunately, it was a year later that Joanne ended my marriage, that she converted him into my enemy, evicted me from my sister Rosin's house, as Ricky fell under the Joan Dupiton evil spell. I hope you can cure yourself from that, nephew Ricky. Now, while I can show numerous cases of family members senselessly turning against me under the mystical control of Dr. Dupiton, let me leave you with some shocking examples. The first, which is the dramatic death of my mother, Anna Victor, some 20 years ago. Because as I had arrived at my sister Rosin's house and someone told me that my mother was dying, I rushed to her home. Then someone said to me, "Claudie, it looks like your mother is trying to say something to you." But as she could not get the words out, I saw my panicking sister Lilian Claude pull me over. And now I will just have you listen to a recording that I made afterward, questioning the family on what had just happened. Please listen.
Upon returning home from work that day, someone immediately informed me that mother was not feeling well. So as I rushed to her home, at which point I heard someone say, "Claudie, I think your mother's trying to say something to you." But as no words came out, Lilian Claude came to me with a shocking statement. She said, "Tendez non Claudie, vous connaissez Roselyne qui tue maman? Listen Claudie, you know that it's Roselyne who killed mother."
In shock, I immediately thought she was losing her head over mother dying. But her reaction was in fear that mother had actually told me who had caused her death. And here is why. As Sister Roseline was already showing signs of Alzheimer's disease, I was informed that mother had instructed Sister Roseline Balmier not to forget her brother Claudie in her will, in light of having given her son Franz 2 engineering career positions. And as hearing that truly bothered Sister Lilian and her money-hungry daughter Joanne, all I will say now is that it led to mother's death. Then 10 years later, after they broke my marriage to Marlene, it was reported that Sister Lilian told some people that Claudie is only half brother, therefore not deserving any of Roselyne's assets. On top of that, we had Lilian trying to frame our sister Roselyne's for our mother's death, and now they have coerced my daughter to stop getting me medical care so they can blame my daughter as the one responsible for my death. But thanks to God, we now all know who are the real criminals. And just as I started this report with my first wife, Paulette Reed, I will close it with an important revelation to her. And that goes back to the days that Joan Dupiton had to evict me from my daughter's house. Because soon after you had sent me the voicemail that I previously presented, I got a phone call from Joan Dupiton in a nice and friendly tone saying that if Paulette is being nasty to you and giving you a hard time for being at Tanisha's house, for your peace of mind, you might just consider leaving, but only if you feel okay. But being that I'm familiar with Joanne's devious techniques, I blasted her and simply hung up the phone. Did you ever know that, Paulette? Joanne has been using you as her puppet from day one while remaining totally silent and looking innocent. Now, Paulette, here's the bottom line. I intend to file multiple criminal charges against Dr. Dupiton. First, as my vision is worsening, Dr. Dupiton will be charged for my blindness, as he has willfully blocked my daughter from taking me to the eye doctor for the past 5 months. Second, for multiple attacks on my life and real cases of attempted murder after breaking my marriage and continuing till today. Third, it's on the death of my mother 20 years ago, on which I have volumes of evidences, including criminal corruption of my daughter and other crimes that will put an end to her medical license. Therefore, since I'm ready to launch a police criminal investigation against Dr. Dupiton. I find it very unfortunate that Joanne had dragged you and my daughter into this criminal campaign with the prospects of a long time in jail. Now, as you are my ex-wife with whom I never had any problem before Joanne Dupiton, I will propose this. Please remove yourself and Tanisha from this case. Go back to your normal life with your husband, and I will set aside all the messages you sent so that you and Tanisha are not included in any ways, so that this case remains what it should be from the beginning, a case of Jean-Claude against Joanne Dupiton. As I said, we had long years of good rapport before I married Marlene. Hope you understand. And in closing, I will say that Joanne Dupiton will get justice in the U.S. Court of Laws. Justice for my sister Rosaline and my mother Anna Rose, whose family she destroyed. Justice shall be made. And if you have a little spirit or tiny belief in God, you will understand the value of this message. You all have a choice in life. You can choose the words of your grandmother Anna Rose and those of our religious leader Rosaline Bamir, or the words of filth, disrespect, atrocities, profanities, hate of Joanne Dupiton. The choice is yours. Now let me close with a drastic revelation to the Haitian community. As Dr. Dupiton is a minor of her generation, how was she able to achieve my downfall as the elder male of the family? And the answer is in the fact that I was raised in a religious, God-fearing family where I could have never imagined that my perfectly raised daughter could have been converted into my enemy, while I viewed her as a symbol who would protect her father against all evils. A trust that was also granted to her mother since our peaceful divorce of 4 decades ago. Therefore, how could Dr. Dupiton have shattered all this trust to make me her victim on January 2016? For that, let me start by revealing that Dr. Dupiton came to realize that her father was a dishonest man who had given her a bastard brother of around her age, who he had raised with a different woman throughout his life with her mother Lillian Claude. So the fact that her father gave her a bastard brother, who she discovered after his death, was a source of her anger and jealousy that drove her to end my marriage to Marlene, rupture my relationship with my daughter, for the sole purpose of destroying my happy life. Furthermore, as I had mentioned, the early issues I had with Marlene's sister, it was soon after Joanne's destruction of my marriage that while browsing the internet and looking at the Heal Haiti Gala, I stumbled on this picture of Dr. Dupiton and Marlene's sister Joelle celebrating their breakup of the marriage, meaning they were working as a team throughout the 4 years of our marriage. But as Joelle's mission was completed on that day, Joanne would kick off her 10 years old mission to bring an end to my life. And today I can categorically say that the evils of Dr. Dupiton were within her since she was a child, as I would often see her in her playpen, eating her feces coming out of her diapers, as I would yell at her mother, "Vini no Liliane, mais Joanne a mangé tatal encore," was again eating her feces. I did not know the meaning of all that back then, but today I do. And as Dr. Dupiton grew up in Haiti where she learned her medical skills, she had also learned and involved with the evil deeds of the Vodou religion, with which she transformed this family from a family of God, led by Anaus Victor and Rosin Balmir, to today's family of evil deed. Now is the bottom line. Joanne called me in Queens County Court. They told her to get lost. She started the case in Long Island Court. They threw her out. And when she called me in U.S. Supreme Court, she realized that she better get off the pot. And this is just the first of a series of videos that will be presented to fully expose the evil and illegal activities of Dr. Marie-Paul Dupiton, owner of Camkids Pediatrics. And I will bring her to court now with a volume of cases, and the medical doctor will end up in jail. And while she has victimized many others before me, God had given me the advantage of being a public person with the Workmaster's major email list that will allow me to put her evil skills to rest. So may God have his wish, and with that I close my report and say goodbye to everyone. Jean-Claude, aka Rockmasters.